Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to embark on a deep dive historical journey that is probably going to shatter absolutely everything you thought you knew about ancient romance. As a historian looking back at these traditions, I can tell you that we're going to look closely at what actually happened when the celebrations ended, the torches burned down, and two people were left alone. Or, well, as we'll soon see, not exactly alone. So get ready to leave all your modern illusions right at the door, because we are diving into the harsh, fascinating, and deeply human realities of ancient marriages. I want you to really picture this for a second. Put yourself directly in the shoes of someone living in an ancient civilization. If tonight was your wedding night, say 4 millennia ago, what kind of reality would actually be waiting for you? You gotta completely forget the fairy tales, forget the secluded honeymoon suites, the champagne, the privacy, all of it. We need to swap our modern expectations for a world that was driven entirely by raw survival, biological necessity, and just immense crushing communal pressure. Just imagine it. You're standing under a canopy of stars, wrapped tightly in these heavy, hand-woven fabrics. You can hear the rhythmic beating of ceremonial drums echoing through your Bronze Age settlement or your ancient Mesopotamian tribal village. It sounds intensely poetic, doesn't it? Almost magical. But honestly, the sensory details of that night were way less about building some romantic ambiance and far more about reinforcing the sheer, terrifying weight of what you were about to undertake. Which brings us to our first major reality check, the death of privacy. Today, we totally expect this ultimate private moment, right? Just the two of you. But step back into the ancient world, and privacy was a luxury practically literally no one possessed. Your reality was likely half the village, and for sure your entire extended family, sleeping in the exact same room with you. You were separated by nothing more than an incredibly thin woven curtain. So why was everyone so heavily involved in your business? Well, because marriage back then was not about finding your soulmate. It was a high-stakes business merger, period. In places like ancient Sumeria, property rights, land distribution, and these absolutely crucial tribal alliances depended entirely on your union being finalized. Because of that, the consummation of a marriage was quite literally a matter of public interest. Guests would literally wait right outside the tent for physical proof that the union was valid. I mean, can you even imagine? The social pressure must have been incredibly suffocating. And that lack of privacy fundamentally changes our understanding of who was actually involved in the wedding night. In several ancient European and tribal cultures, there was this mind-blowing custom known as the rite of the first night. Before the groom, who by the way was often terrifyingly young and had likely never even spoken to his bride, could even touch her, a local chieftain, high priest, or powerful landlord had the legal right to spend the first night with her. And this wasn't seen as some weird anomaly, it was a completely accepted way to bless the union and reinforce the social hierarchy. The groom, he just had to stand aside and wait his turn. Okay, let's move on to our next section, survival, spirits, and superstitions. If you step into the ancient honeymoon suite, the environmental conditions were, frankly, brutal. Your bed, a pile of dried straw, or maybe some animal skins thrown on a dirt floor. The air in there was thick, stinging your eyes with smoke from indoor cooking fires. You'd constantly smell the livestock sleeping just a few feet away from you, and you'd be fighting a never-ending battle with bugs. And right in the middle of all this, the couple often had to wear these incredibly heavy, symbolic pieces of jewelry or be coated in thick oils. Not to look good, but to ward off literal demons. And this brings us to a bizarre, really terrifying number found all across ancient Asian and European traditions. 3. 3 full days and nights. That is exactly how long couples were often mandated to wait before any intimacy could occur. Due to this deep, paralyzing fear of the supernatural, the wedding night wasn't a night of passion, it was a night of intense, mandated abstinence. Picture this. You are utterly exhausted from days of non-stop ceremony. Yet the village elders order you to sit facing this absolute stranger for the entire night. Absolutely no physical touching allowed. You're instructed to guard a secret flame or recite prayers for hours on end because the community genuinely believed that giving in to desire too quickly would anger ancestral spirits and curse your future children. It was the ultimate test of endurance, fueled entirely by superstition. Now, let's look at how this played out differently across the map in cultural extremes, Sparta versus Egypt. You see, the ancient world was a massive spectrum of wildly different experiences. Over in Sparta, the atmosphere was pitch black, very militarily focused. But contrast that sharply with the joyful, feasting atmosphere of ancient Egypt. A Spartan bride actually had her head shaved and wore men's clothes. Meanwhile, an Egyptian bride was adorned in beautiful, perfumed fine linen. Sparta viewed the night as this rigid test of warrior stealth, while Egypt viewed it as a cosmic mirror of the gods themselves creating the universe. Think about it. If you were a Spartan groom, your wedding night was basically a high-stakes, secretive Black Ops mission. You had to sneak away from your military barracks entirely in secret. You'd slip into a pitch-black room where your new bride waited, finalize the marriage in the dark, and then immediately sneak back out to go sleep next to your fellow soldiers. And if you got caught, the public humiliation was massive. You literally had to prove your stuff just to claim your wife. But on the flip side, the ancient Egyptians offer us this wonderful glimmer of warmth. History isn't just grim endurance and military tests. Ancient Egyptian texts and love poetry actually show us that they experienced genuine affection. They celebrated intimacy with beer, music, and feasts. For them, it wasn't a dark military op, it was a joyful celebration of life and creation forcing its way back against the chaos of the unpredictable ancient world. However, this leads us into our final section, the universal shadow of fear. Because despite the joy in places like Egypt, one harsh reality unified every single ancient civilization: the immense burden of survival. We're talking about a world completely devoid of modern medicine. Intimacy was strictly regulated to produce heirs. For the bride, the wedding bed was honestly terrifying. Pregnancy was a leading cause of death, so she knew this night could easily end her life within a year. And for the groom, the extreme pressure to father a male heir was just crushing. Failure could literally mean complete social exile or the permanent ruin of his family line. So, when we pull all these historical sources together, what do we get? We see that the ancient wedding night was essentially a crucible of emotion. There was this intense, chaotic mix of crushing communal pressure, deep religious dread of spirits and demons, cold political strategy regarding land and alliances, and above all, raw human survival. It was entirely unromantic by our modern standards, practically clinical at times, and fraught with immense danger. Yet, what you should really take away from this explainer today is this final thought. Stripped of our modern comforts, our secluded hotel suites, and our privacy, did the heart of an ancient human beat with the exact same nervousness, fear, and quiet hope as yours? The settings have changed entirely. The intense rituals have faded into history for sure, but that fundamental, profound human desire to connect, to build a stable life, and to survive against incredible odds, that remains exactly the same today. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into our past. Keep questioning the history you think you know.